In the quiet valleys of the old kingdom, where the fog never lifts from the hills and the trees whisper ancient truths, there once stood a mansion so grand that its towers touched the sky. This was the Marwood Estate, a house of wealth, order, and unspoken sorrow. The elders still tell stories about what happened there, not tales of war or riches, but of something far stranger, far more tragic. They speak of a servant boy named Samuel, two daughters of noble blood, and a truth so deep that even time itself could not bury it. This is their tale, a story of how love, when planted in shadow, blooms into tragedy, and how the blood we do not know can shape the fate we cannot escape. Samuel came into the world with no name. He was found at dawn on the steps of a red-roofed village church, wrapped in a fine cloth embroidered with moon lilies, with only a silver locket resting on his chest. No note, no basket, just the faint warmth of a child not long left behind. He was taken in by the local priest, Father Nasifor, a patient man who believed in fate more than coincidence. He lifted the child. He named him Samuel. Whispers spread. He has no shadow. He doesn't blink. Some claimed he was the son of a disgraced queen. Others said he came from the sky. But Father Nasifor raised him like a son. Samuel grew into a quiet boy who listened more than he spoke, who hummed melodies that made candles flicker. But as he turned 8, villagers grew uneasy. Doors were marked with protective charms. Mothers pulled children close. With a heavy heart, the priest gave him bread, a wooden rosary, and fastened the silver locket tight. He sent Samuel to the only place where shadows walked freely, the Marwood Estate. The estate was known across the land, not just for its wealth, but for the iron discipline of Lord Marwood and the sharp elegance of his wife. Samuel grew up among gardeners, cooks, and stablemen. His hands were rough before his voice deepened, but even in silence, he carried a dignity that no training could teach. He moved with grace, bowed with care, and spoke only when spoken to. But when he did, his voice was soft and steady, like water over smooth stones. The nobles of the house rarely looked his way. To them he was a shadow that swept the floors and lit the lanterns. But Lady Marwood, she saw him. Often she would stop mid-stride and stare. Her eyes would lose focus, as if looking through him and into something long buried. She would open her mouth, then close it again and walk away with trembling fingers. The daughters of the house, Elise and Marianne, lived behind veils of silk and expectation. Elise the elder was fire-restless, proud, and too clever for the games of noblemen. Marianne was spring rain, quiet, observant, with a heart too soft for court. As children they had been inseparable. They sang to the birds in the lemon trees, raced barefoot through the orchards, and shared secrets behind carved doors. But the house grew colder as they grew older. Walls thickened, expectations stiffened, and their laughter became something they only let out when no one else could hear. Elise, always one to break rules rather than bend to them, was the first to find comfort in Samuel's presence. He listened, really listened, in a way no nobleman ever had. Under the pale orange blossoms of the orchard, she would meet him in the hush of midnight, where love bloomed in stolen whispers and forbidden touches. Marianne, drawn by Samuel's quiet strength and the sadness she could never name, sought him out in daylight. They walked garden paths where no eyes watched, and she read him verses from her favorite poets while he swept. Her heart clung to him gently, like moss to a stone. Neither sister knew of the other, and Samuel, raised without kin or name, followed the only thing he'd ever learned to trust, the ache in his heart. He never imagined it would lead to ruin. It began with whispers, quiet ones, the kind that slide beneath doors and hide behind drawn curtains, the kind that never start loud but always end in thunder. Elise was the first to fall ill. The maid spoke of her sudden silence, of how the fire in her voice dulled to a flicker. She stopped riding her horse at dawn. She stopped attending dinners. Her skin grew pale, and her eyes, once proud and piercing, now darted like birds startled from the treetops. Not long after, Marianne too withdrew. Her smiles became forced. Her appetite vanished. She lingered in the gardens too long, pressing her hands to her belly when she thought no one watched. Lady Marwood summoned the family physician, a man too old to see clearly but too proud to admit it. He prescribed tonics of bitter root and mountain honey. He spoke of female melancholia, and the servants pretended not to hear what he truly meant. But the midwives called in secret under the cover of night knew better. They came wrapped in shawls of cola brown and deep indigo, women of old faith and firm voices. They burned herbs that made the house smell of river smoke. They hummed songs that hadn't been sung since the days before Scripture, and when they laid their hands upon each daughter's womb, they exchanged no words, only a shared glance. Both daughters were with child. The estate erupted. Lord Marwood's fury was not loud at first. It was cold, measured. He sat in the great hall beneath the lion's crest, fingers folded as servants cleared the room in haste. His eyes did not blink, his jaw clenched like stone. When he finally spoke, it was with a voice so low it seemed to shake the very bones of the house. "Who?" he asked. Just one word, but it cracked through the chamber like thunder through summer heat. Elise lowered her gaze. Marianne trembled, and then together they whispered a name that twisted the air. Samuel. Lord Marwood's chair scraped back with a growl. His cane struck the floor. "Bring him," he commanded. Samuel was brought into the hall with the locket still around his neck and the dust of the stable on his boots. He looked not defiant nor afraid, only confused. Betrayal bloomed across his face like bruises. His eyes flicked to Elise, then to Marianne. He shook his head once slowly, as if he'd slipped into a dream too dark to wake from. Then from the far end of the room, Lady Marwood rose. Her voice trembled, not with fear but with the strain of a truth held too long beneath her ribs. "He is not your servant," she said. "He is my son." The silence that followed was vast, a silence so thick the walls themselves seemed to inhale. She reached into the folds of her gown and pulled forth a second locket, an exact match to the one around Samuel's neck. The silver caught the candlelight. The whole room seemed to tilt. She looked not at Lord Marwood nor her daughters, but at Samuel. "They took you from me," she said, her voice cracking. "Before I ever came to this house. A scandal too large for my family to bear. You were sent away, hidden, lost." Tears ran down her face, but no one moved to wipe them. Samuel's knees gave, and he sat heavily on the cold marble floor. Elise fell back a step. Marianne covered her mouth. The pieces tumbled into place with cruel precision. The silver locket, the kind eyes, the feeling unspoken, unexplained, that each sister had carried for him. All of it was wrong now. Not forbidden love. Something deeper, something unholy. Brother, their brother. The children they carried, his blood and theirs. Twisted not by desire, but by ignorance. A love that had bloomed not in sin but in shadow. No one screamed. There was no need. The truth rang louder than any shout ever could. And Samuel's son, brother, servant, sat amidst it all, the quiet center of a storm he had never seen coming. Oil lamps burned low in the halls. Shutters creaked as if sighing. The wind passed through the house like a ghost, stirring the curtains, rattling the panes. No one spoke above a whisper. Even the dogs in the kennels whimpered without cause. Samuel vanished before sunrise. Some said they saw him walking through the fog-draped fields before dawn, his shadow long and bowed, his footsteps slow, like a man carrying the weight of all his ancestors. He left behind his servant's uniform, folded neatly on the edge of his cot, but he took nothing else. Not his shoes, not even his silver locket. Some believe he went north, into the highlands, where mist covers the mountains and hermits speak with spirits. Others claim he flung himself into the Igbo River, the one that curves like a serpent beneath the estate, and that the waters, knowing his sorrow, swallowed him whole and left no trace. But the old women in the village say otherwise. They say he wanders still, that he became something between man and myth, a quiet spirit who walks the tree lines, brushing the leaves with fingers full of regret, a shadow with no name, always looking back but never returning. Elise and Marianne left within the week, each in silence, each in shame. Elise rode south to a distant fishing town where no one knew her name. She raised her son alone, never once mentioning the father. She worked with her hands, harvesting palm oil, weaving baskets, and in the quiet hours she stared at the sea, as if waiting for a tide that would never rise. Marianne went east to the hills beyond Idena, where she gave birth to a daughter in a hut with a tin roof and a garden full of hibiscus. She spoke little to the neighbors and never married. At night she sang lullabies, her mother once taught her, but always in a different key, as though something had shifted inside her that could never be tuned again. The sisters never wrote to each other. They never met again. Lady Marwood, upon hearing that Samuel had gone, began to unravel. She wandered the halls in her nightclothes, her hair uncombed, her lips moving in soft broken prayers. She clutched the locket to her chest like it was a newborn child. Sometimes she would call out his name, not the name he bore as a servant, but the name she'd given him in secret before he was taken from her. She stopped attending dinners. She stopped recognizing faces. One morning she was found kneeling beside a bowl of water in the garden, speaking to her reflection as though it were a child. From that day forward she was never the same. Lord Marwood did not rage. He simply broke. The scandal devoured him from within. The pride he'd spent a lifetime building crumbled like termite-eaten wood. He took to his study, locking the doors for days at a time. Meals were left untouched. The fire burned low. And one day when the butler finally forced the door open, Lord Marwood was found slumped over his desk. He was buried in silence, without ceremony. No mourners stood by his grave. Only the housekeeper and two gravediggers watched as the dirt fell. After that, the Marwood estate began to rot. Vines clawed up its stone walls. Moss choked the fountains. The glass in the east wing shattered in a storm and was never replaced. Birds made homes in the rafters where chandeliers once hung. The great banquet hall filled with dust and silence, and in the winter, even the hearth forgot how to burn. Children in nearby villages were warned never to go near it. But still, on certain nights when the moon is full and the valley is drowned in mist, people say you can hear the voice of a child echoing through the ruins. A voice thin as wind, asking a question no one dares answer. Who am I? When truth is buried beneath silence, it does not die, it waits. And when it rises, it brings roots and thorns alike. Blood remembers what mouths forget. And love, however pure, cannot escape what it does not know. In the end, it is not the lie that curses us, but the silence that lets it grow.